because I think it's like you get left with, when you use the word creativity, what I think of is like creativity. Really, what it comes down to is allowing yourself to like wonder and discover things. Like the analogy of balancing on a rail when you're tired sometimes is like you're just flopping all over the place and you're just catching yourself and catching yourself. But when you allow yourself to be creative, it's like, oh, but I wonder if I do this, what if I try this, what if I try this? And it's like a very in the moment experience, and which dieting can totally feel like too. But yeah, and I think it goes like, probably the word fatigue is probably more accurate than tired, because fatigue is like a body sensation versus tired is like the like, I think tired was more of an emotion, as I'm thinking about as we use this word, because you can totally like be tired after a conversation you had that you didn't like, and that's not a body thing at all. So there is the one of where your body is at, and then the two, exactly what you said, like the emotion that you want to put in. Like there's a theater drill that's actually a pretty similar drill to what you and I have done before, which is you basically, as you step into a box, like you've drawn a box on the ground or something, you choose an emotion, you go all out of that with that emotion, right? So like you have your like happy box and your sad box and your angry box and blah blah blah. But it does sort of train you that you can actually like step into an emotion, and not like a have to, because I think it's also in terms of balance to not be like I have to always put a face on, put a mask on, but it is like recognizing you do have that tool as a human being, that you can literally generate emotions. If that's, when I do competitions, like actually, as another small tangent, one of my favorite quotes, and I wish I knew where it was from, is basically like, training is for listening to your body and competition is telling your body to shut up. And it's like knowing those spaces, right? Because it's like when you're competing, you're just like, you don't really have a choice. Oh no, I feel anxious today. You're like, nope, you're going to compete because you're here and you said you would. So we're doing something, right? Versus training is like, that would be detrimental to your training. And obviously, again, there's a balance to that, because you don't want to go break your leg while you're competing. But just knowing the right moments for when it is the time to choose to be a certain way versus to like listen and go with the flow with it as well. But that's a discovered thing too. It's not like there's a right answer. It's just like playing with today. Maybe today is a day to push forward. Oh, maybe it's not, or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like there is no right answer, and it is a like lived experience, and that you are going to, mess up, and you have to give yourself the compassion to mess up, and I think inside of generating those feelings that you want to have, like the difference between, how do I want to say that? So in like most people feel that their emotions just happen to them, and then they have to act off of those emotions. And for the most part, your emotions do kind of just show up, right? Like you don't really have a lot to do with your emotions. They're just kind of like there now.
Totally. And like a fart. Yeah.
It's just like, now
I'm angry now. Okay.
Like they do, but so emotions, this was, and I actually, again, listening to Brendan Burchard, his podcast last week, he distinguished between emotions and feelings, and I actually really liked this distinction. He was like, the emotions are the things that show up that you just have nothing to do with, like they're just like they just come out of you, right? Like someone says something and anger shows up, and you had nothing to do with like that anger showing up. It wasn't a choice whatsoever, right? But a feeling is something that you have control over and that you can generate. So like, okay, anger has shown up, but how I want to be in this situation is, connected, right? Like that's the feeling that I want to generate for myself, is connection, and you don't have to push that angry feeling aside. Like you can just have anger be there. That's okay. Or deal with it however you need to. Maybe you need to go and take 10 breaths and then come back. But that you can generate the feeling of being connected, and that way you bring yourself back to choosing, you know, what you can do. And I kind of wanted to tie that back into body acceptance, because for me, in my own journey of body acceptance, I would make those feelings wrong. Like I very much am like my mindset does go into, there's a right way to be, right? There's a right way to be and there's a wrong way to be. And I better be doing the right things in order to make it work, right? And
which, by the way, is a very like I've actually been learning about like white culture a lot, and it's totally a white culture thing. Like I think it's important. Again, it's important to recognize how many thoughts are not our own thoughts. Like not every culture in the world is like, don't be certain ways. It's a very I think obvious stereotype you see around white people who are like, we can't fully express ourselves because we've been taught you have to be a right way. You can't fully have, you know, like a lot of anger is bad, and or a lot of like being too excited is bad even, and you get very repressed people in their life. So that's one thing I just want to point at, is like, is that actually your thought? You know?
Right, exactly. And a lot of it's not. A lot of it is, you know, learned through my experiences growing up and, you know, whatever. Yeah, like a lot of those thoughts aren't my thoughts. And that's like what my brain has been trained to do, right? There's a right way to be, there's a wrong way to be, and I better be the right way, so help you God.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so just dismantling, and how that played out in my own journey with my body is like, there's a right way that my body should be, and if it's not that, then I have to be embarrassed about it. I have to be upset about it. If I'm not upset about it, then there is something wrong with me. Because if I don't want the right, like, why would I not want the right body? Like, what's wrong with you that you don't want the right body, you know? And and for me, it was, I think you and I had very similar epiphanies around our body, and mine was with yoga. I started taking yoga. I did yoga with my mom when I was like in middle school. And then when I got out of college, the amount of activities that I was doing completely dropped off. And I have metal bars in my back. And so when I don't have a balance of activity, I start to get back spasms. And so my mom was like, oh, you should start doing yoga. Right. So that's why I was doing yoga, was actually because of my back spasms. But what ended up happening in yoga is that I was doing Bikram yoga, which I actually don't highly recommend Bikram yoga anymore, but that's kind of where I started. But you stare at yourself in the mirror for an hour and a half, just sweating. And Bikram yoga is like 110, 115 degrees.
Yeah.
So you are in like a sports bra and like tiny little shorts, or else you're just completely uncomfortable. So you're standing there looking at your body for an hour and a half doing these yoga poses. And for the first probably like 3 months, I would spend that entire hour and a half thinking about how terrible my body looked in the mirror. Like in every single yoga pose, I would find what was wrong with my body. I was like, oh, see that there, like that's wrong. You know, when we twist this way and my skin kind of folds, that's disgusting. And I would sit there for an hour and a half having these terrible thoughts about my body. And then there was one day where I went to yoga and we were in chair pose, and I looked at my body, and I've been doing Bikram for like 3 days a week for like 3 months. And I was getting so strong, and we were in chair pose, and I remember seeing like the start of my abs, and I could start to see like the start of the definition in my legs, and I was like, oh my God, my body is so cool.
Yeah.
Like I had this moment of like appreciation for my body. And it wasn't that, I still had like that tiny little roll. Like it didn't look all that different. Like not a lot had changed really. But it was just that mindset shift of going from my body is this disgusting thing to wow, like my body is so fucking cool. Like look at what my body can do. Oh my God, that's so neat. And that's what started me on this conversation of what else can my body do? Right. And so then it's like I started doing
like leveling up game now. You're like,
right, right. I'm like,
what
else? What else? But all of a sudden my body became this really cool thing that I like so appreciated. And so then the conversation, it just took that, for me, it was kind of a shift. And it's not that I don't deal with, that insecurity still, like those thoughts are still there of like, I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, should my body really look like that? And I'm like, Elizabeth.
Totally, yeah. You're just like, come on, it's a body. Yeah. Yeah. Mirrors are really interesting. Because I also had a similar experience when I started taking pole dancing lessons a couple years ago. Not that I'm not still practicing it very much, but I do remember being like, I'm the heaviest person in the class, but also was like, I'm also the strongest person in the class because I do parkour and I have all this upper body strength.
Right.
But yeah, and I, like there are mirror work exercises where you literally go and like be with your body, and that's so important. And I think it's another thing that came up as you were speaking was just the grit that you have, because I know a lot of people, like I personally probably would have given up at like been like I don't know how, like I don't like this feeling, I don't like looking at myself, I'd rather just not acknowledge it and not spend an hour and a half every week in the mirror, and I think it does come down to that's really awesome. And I also wonder what it would be like if you were able to start with you're already good enough and build off of there.
Yeah, absolutely. If I would have had that mindset from day one of walking into Bikram, looking at my body, just being like, yeah, this is my body.
Right. Yeah.
Like this is what my body looks like. Right. And yeah, like the experience definitely would have been different for sure, because then you're just building off of already just, because I think that when you start, you have to have an appreciation. Like for me, like accepting your body and having appreciation for your body go hand in hand. And I don't know if that's because of my own experience. I'm this is kind of a statement / question for you, because I'm like, okay, now I'm wondering. I'm like, okay, is that my own experience? Because that was really pivotal for me. Was when I really started appreciating my body. So is that in your own experience with body acceptance, is appreciating your body tied into that?
I think I'm going to answer that with a tangent, which is what it has me think about is like movement is a human right. And that's a big reason why I am such a big part of Parkour Visions. And I remember my executive director, Caitlin Contrella, was the first person I ever heard say it exactly like that. Like movement is a human right. And that's a big part of what we do as a nonprofit, is try to like increase the number of people who are actually moving, whether it's through parkour or, play or different kinds of methods. But it's like, there's something that just happens naturally when you're moving around more. It doesn't become this hyper focused obsession about, again, the aesthetic, how I look. I think a big issue in our culture is we're obsessed with how we look, and we also don't move, so we don't know what our body is capable of. And so I think that's really like appreciation is very important, but there's so many other ways to appreciate your body. And I think that sounds like what you really discovered was like, oh my gosh, I can do all these things with my body, you know,
Right.
and I can, and even discovering like, not like I can do something now, I have to go learn this super high level, skill, and now I'm not good enough, which I'm sure happens in yoga too. Like, oh my gosh, I have to learn the perfect handstand, and
Right.
or
Well, I mean, some of
whatnot,
the things
right?
that I see with my students too is that they will compare their level of yoga to me. And like I said, I've been doing yoga since I was like 12 years old. So my body looks a lot different doing yoga than someone
Yeah,
who's only been doing yoga for a year. And I think that that's a really normal thing to do, is to have that like human comparison. But that is something that I
totally.
actively talk to my students about, is not comparing where your body's at to someone else. And I often say that in my class. I'm like, look, I've been doing yoga since I was 12. That's why my body can do some of the things
Yeah.
that it can do, because I've literally been practicing this for over half of my life.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think it does go back to like, how do you balance wanting to achieve a goal and also where you're at right now? Because
totally.
it can be very easy to flip flop. Like, I'm only going to be goal oriented, or I'm only going to like screw my goals. I'm only going to appreciate where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I think what it comes down to, like, it's almost like when you do movement a lot, you hopefully discover that you're capable, and that's just who you are, like I know I'm capable of, I don't know, what's like a triple back full or something, like a gymnastics move. Like, if I spent enough damn time, I would learn that skill, right?
Right.
But I'm not going to go learn that skill, but I know that I'm capable of that. And I think that's what is so pinnacle for movement, is especially in parkour specifically, where it is. And I think yoga in a lot of ways is very much a sister sport to parkour. It's
Oh,
like there's so
yeah.
much mindset mixture.
There's so
um
much, there's a lot of overlap.
yeah.
There's a lot of overlap for sure.
Yeah, in terms of mindset, probably one of the closest sports or like activities, movement
I
activities.
definitely,
Yeah,
because one of the things that we're getting to is that flow state, and both
yeah,
yoga,
exactly.
yeah, and both
Which
yoga,
is like, oh, not fixating on what you can't control is one, like focusing on the moment. Flow state. Yeah.
right, yeah,
If we
exactly,
all moved and all knew about flow state, then maybe life would be better for people. I don't know. Just
maybe, but
throwing that.
that's why I like using movement analogies for life, because I think that so much of what you deal with as a human can be dealt with through movement. And
Yeah.
that flow state is absolutely so like, oh, if everybody in the world could learn flow state, like learn how to
Mm,
get themselves into that flow state, I think we would have so many more like happy
agreed.
human beings on the planet, because
Totally.
it does completely unlock something inside of you, that it's like everything's going to be okay, it's that you're capable, it's that you can just move and breathe freely, it's this
Totally.
like total sense of freedom, and yeah, like freedom and capability, like you just all of a sudden you're just like, oh, anything's possible, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
and
it's
yeah,
so many like things you can do with flow state. Like, obviously movement is a fantastic way to learn it, but I also
yeah,
relate to, like, the landmark communication courses that we've both been in, to me, is a fantastic way to learn how to do flow state in conversation. And that's what I think of with their curriculum a lot. Not that they would say that, but that's like what I've gotten out of it, is how to have, because everyone in the world has had a conversation with someone where they're just like, oh my God, I just love this conversation. We're totally in it. But to
yeah,
have that as a developed skill is so cool. And like, I think about Zen practice as I'm not that I practice Zen, but there's so many stories about like, I'm doing my tea ceremony and now I'm in boom flow state. Like,
yeah,
everything in life is movement, like there's,
energy
oh,
movement, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like have you heard of the sea slug? There's
The
a sea,
no,
there's,
what?
there's a sea,
Like, sorry, that's
Let me just
Like,
throw this in.
I went from like
coolest random facts.
to like, oh,
no,
what?
we're going to sea slugs. Okay, there's a sea slug. I can't remember what the species is called, but it literally, what it does is its larval stage is it has a nervous system when it's in its larval stage, and it crawls around on the seafloor, and then it might not be specifically a sea slug, but like one of those type creatures. Larval stage has a nervous system, wiggles around the seafloor, plants itself, becomes like an anemone type thing, and it literally eats its own nervous system after it, like, it doesn't need it anymore because it's in place. So literally, like, the reason why we have brains and have intelligence the way like we do is because of movement. Like, plants don't have nervous systems.
Yeah.
Like, creatures that don't move, that are just like chilling in place like a sea anemone, don't have a nervous system. So I don't know, I think that shit's really cool, and it just blows my mind every time I think about it. So
that is. No, that's so interesting. I
yeah.
had never, one of the other reasons, I say this almost every single episode, but one of the reasons that I love doing this podcast is because I literally learn something new every single time that I talk to someone. I'm like, what do you
now you can talk about sea slugs. Yeah.
There's so much to know. There's just so much to know, you know? And that's, yeah, I really love that. And so I kind of, so where my brain is right now is that because I'm kind of keeping it back in this like body acceptance arena, because I think that movement is an excellent way that if you're struggling with body acceptance, that like being in your body and learning how your body moves, and like just learning like how cool this thing is that like carries you around every single day.
Totally, yeah.
Definitely one way, but really only one way to gain body acceptance, because the other thing that we've been talking about is also your mindset around it, right? And so we've talked about, you know, having a balanced mindset, like really discovering for yourself that state of like back and forth, you know. But what I know for myself, for the mindset part of body acceptance, it wasn't something that I could do on my own. Like
conversations are totally important. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was something where I had to start talking about it. Whether it was to friends, family, professionals. I'm pretty sure the first conversation that I had about that really was with just like friends and family. I don't know if yours was with friends and family, or like you said that you went to therapy, and like, so I don't know if those first conversations were with your therapist, but for me, like a huge part of my body acceptance was inside of conversation, like was getting outside of my own head and thoughts, and being able to express those thoughts in a safe place, with people who were also committed to, you know, me accepting me.
Yeah, like I think facilitated conversations are so important, and it is almost like, if movement is like a key necessity for being a human, I also think like having healthy conversations where you can reflect is also, and be gotten, and like, you know, look at those thoughts is so necessary as well. Like, that's also what makes us a human being. Like, obviously we're ridiculously social creatures. Like, we have this developed language, you know, so yeah. So
super complicated.
Super complicated
Noise that come out of our mouths.
Right? Do you ever just like get weirded out by the fact that we're just making a bunch of noises and you can totally understand what people are saying?
No. Well, that's the cool thing about listening to other people speak in languages that I don't understand, is that you can actually hear the sounds for just being sounds.
Totally, yeah.
Because when you know the language, you know the associated meaning with those sounds, so your brain is dealing with the meaning of the sounds instead of the actual sound itself. That blows
my mind.
Fascinating. It's totally, oh my gosh, it's like I took a like linguistics 101 class in college. Oh my gosh, it was like I knew that it wasn't my major, like I knew that it wasn't like a thing that I was going to dedicate myself to, but I'm so fascinated by linguistics. I just love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're just literally making sounds, and we've agreed that these sounds have the meanings that they have, and now we have like societies. What?
And there's like whole concepts that are only exist like memes. They only exist, not like memes like internet memes, but like the traditional usage of the word meme is just about concepts that exist and evolve only through language, which is crazy. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, one of the things that I really do try on this podcast to bring it down to reality. because
I get like, whoa, man, language, man. Yeah.
Totally, because I could totally go there because I love it. I love it. But I try to keep it at like, okay, what does that look like in your daily life? What are people thinking about? Like, what are people dealing with? All this stuff.
I think I'm gonna tie it in. So
yeah.
tying into body acceptance, it is like when you stop fucking obsessing about, am I good enough? There's space to just be wowed.
Totally.
So that's what I want to say.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Yes. Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you let all that other bullshit go, like when you actually distinguish the bullshit from like who you actually are, and like what your choice, like we've been talking a lot about choosing and like choices. And really accepting exactly how your body is for exactly how your body is in this moment, that you can just be totally wowed by it. I mean, that's what happened to me in that yoga class. I was just like, all of a sudden it's just like I accepted my body for exactly how it is, exactly how I was looking at it, and then I was like fucking blown away. I was like, look at what my body can do. It's so cool.
That's another reason why I love, like, on Instagram, all the times I've achieved something. I have like certain clips of me landing, like the first time I ever landed a backflip, like on a spring floor, which is like, no mats effectively. I literally like raised my hands up like, oh, and I was just so surprised and blown away. And I have other movements where I'm just like, like a lot of the time it's like, I'm gonna go to the park and I gotta like work on this skill. It's gonna be hard. But then like that moment is like so beautiful. Yeah. It's the best.
I videotaped myself doing Kongs the other day, like, because I'm still learning Kongs, because in the world of parkour, I'm still absolutely like a noob, right? And still noob land of parkour.
Hard, by the way. Oh my god, like Kongs are really a beginner level movement. So hard. Yeah. A beginner level movement is like being able to get down to the floor and crawl. Like there are so many people in our society who cannot crawl. Like, Konging requires jumping while crawling over a wall.
And this is where I have to coach myself. I have to take my own coaching, because because then I become, I said my students like sometimes compare themselves to me, and I've been doing yoga since I was 12, but this is where I have to give that up myself. I have to actually practice that myself, because then it's like, okay, Brandy's been doing parkour and she's like, this amazing,
like
parkour.
A decade and a half of practice.
Literally has been practicing parkour for like 15 years, 16 years, or however long, she's been practicing for. And so it's like, I have to take my own coaching when it's like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. And it's okay that that's where I'm at. That's totally fine.
Because the thoughts don't go away. Like, it's not like it's just actually being with those thoughts. Like, whenever I compete, the fear doesn't go away. It's just the practice of being more connected to those thoughts. Oh, I have to, this is pretty much the last thing I have in my brain, but I have to totally call out a book that I have somewhere in this book pile.
Okay, great.
It's called How Emotions Are Made, and it's literally the science.
Tell me that book.
Oh, I love it. So it's literally like this new science that's come out about like how we usually think it, like historically we've thought of emotions as, here's your brain map, and this is where sad is, and this is where angry is, and this is where blah 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 is, and it's like you can map it out in the brain. But scientists have been discovering that there are no, it's not like you have like the happy part of your brain that lights up, like emotions are actually memes. They're cultural conversations about what something looks like for instance, anger, what we call anger, can look like yelling. It can look like being really quiet and glaring. It can look like crying. For me, I usually cry when I'm angry. That's like my go-to when I get mad.
Oh, I'm the quiet and glare.
Yeah, see, right? Like, but it wouldn't make sense for the brain to be like oh, the anger is lighting up when there's like all these different displays of that emotion. So what's actually happening in the brain is there's pretty much like two receptors that we have, and you can graph it out, where you have sort of like rested versus active. It's probably not these exact words, but like rested versus active. And then like it's like aroused and not aroused. Like the loudness of it, essentially. Or it's like surrender. I don't know. There's two things in it, but I gotta find it now because
I'll put it in the show notes.
Anyways,
show notes thing.
But point being, like, there's only like two things that your body feels, and it's like, are you in an active state or a rested state versus like, are you in a loud versus withdrawn sort of thing? And everything else is an interpretation. It's what your body physiologically feels plus the situation.
Right. And what you've been like programmed to respond to.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're gonna call that anger. Like having this physiological sensation of like, my heart feels heavy or whatever. Like that's even like not real language for something that happens, but like there's that sensation of something dropping in your body, right?
Yeah.
And then like it's the situation is, I don't know, my husband said something that pissed me off or something. Said something.
Yeah.
And for me, I make that, because I have language, I make that mean pissed off.
Right.
And so it just goes back to exactly what we said of like, there's actually differentiating for yourself the physical sensation that you're having versus what you're calling it, and I think that's where the freedom to sort of like choose your emotion comes in, because not like the sensation goes away, the situation doesn't go away, but actually like powerfully dealing with it.
Excuse me.
Had to call that book out because love it. Everyone should read that book. I
will put it in the show notes so that people can. I actually have. I'm also gonna. Not that Amazon ever needs to be plugged, but Amazon.
What?
Just like sometimes I love Oprah's Super Soul podcast, and sometimes I'll like bring up Oprah's Super Soul podcast, and I'm like, not that Oprah like ever needs to be plugged. But Amazon has a thing on Audible, like has an Audible thing where you can have like a subscription. I love reading books, but I also love listening to books. And
reading is the best, or listening is the best. I mean,
yeah, they aren't sponsoring me. They can sponsor me though. Anybody who has a subscription, I will accept
Audible sponsorship. Hook her up.
But they have like a thing where you pay monthly, and then you get credits, and then you can get books. And it's like, I think it's like the greatest thing ever, because I love reading and I also love listening to reading. And so that's what I do.
You got it. Audible subscription. 10 out of 10.
So anyway, I'm going to put, that's my next book. My next book is
How Emotions Are Made.
Emotions Are Made. I love it. Okay. What else would you say to someone who is, we've talked about a lot. We talked about mindset. We've talked about movement. I know that you also do stuff inside of nutrition as well, and you nutrition and stuff. But what was there? I'm gonna slow down. Okay, breathe. Is there anything else around body? I know that we could talk about this for days, years. We could literally talk about this for the rest of our life. But is there anything?
I do.
Anything else? Is there anything else that you can think of, or that you would want to leave people with? Maybe people who are struggling with body acceptance, that we haven't covered yet.
two things. One is that it really is such a journey, because one thing we haven't really talked very much about in terms of body acceptance and diet is we haven't talked about nutrition at all.
Mm.
And I'm definitely not a nutritionist. I'm not a nutritional therapist. I'd love to like, I've definitely learned a lot over literally a decade of working with nutritional therapists and,
Being an athlete
self-reading,
and yeah.
being an athlete. Yeah, there's so much of it. Um, but yeah, like, just like that is something that I just want to like address, because there is, your body is a part of the conversation, and it's so, like, hunger is a physiological sensation
Mm-hmm.
in addition to an experience that in addition to like almost like an emotion at the same time. So it's like giving yourself the space to discover where you're at with that, because there's so many different ways to diet, and there's so many different, your macros, or like keto and vegan and blah, 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 blah. And like it really is like giving yourself the space to discover what works for you, and it may change. I used to be a very big meat eater, and then my husband went vegan, and now I'm like eating meat once a week, which, if you had talked to me 5 years ago about that, I would have been like, that is the devil. Vegan is so unhealthy. So, and I'm sure there's people who listen to this who would agree with that, like, so it's just giving yourself the space to experiment and, not make it wrong. Like, there's certain diets that call for refeed days, and refeeds will naturally have you bloat up. It's also really good for your metabolism if you've been dieting for a long period of time. But then if you don't have a healthy mindset with your own, like bloating and your own like fat rolls and stuff, you'll never achieve where you're at. If you don't just like accept that a human body bloats sometimes, especially as a woman, just for the ladies listening, like, oh, once a month your body's going to bloat up for sometimes up to a week or more. Like, you gotta accept that. So,
Right.
being willing to just discover nutrition and be curious about it is a huge thing. And, if you feel totally stopped, to reach out to nutritionists, like, that's definitely a super valid thing.
Mm.
The other last thing I want to say is, I'm such an open book. Like, if people want to message me, obviously I do coaching, but if they want to just like message me on Instagram, like, I'm like, yeah, do it up. I love these conversations. I could talk all day about it. And I also just am open to listening for where people are at, and sometimes not even just give advice, but just be like, yeah, I got you, that fucking sucks, I know how that feels. Or like, yay. Like, achievements, yay. So
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Celebrate. Well, I think to sum up, what we've talked about, it really does start with your mindset,
yeah,
right? Like, your mindset and how you perceive your own body, and just being able to, whatever that it through whatever means are healthy, for the individual, whether that be therapy or movement classes or talking to friends and family, or because I mean, not everybody who deals with body acceptance is dealing with something as drastic as an eating disorder. So whatever actions are appropriate, to take to start to shift your mindset around
yeah,
your body and around the conversations, recognizing the conversations that you have about your body, right? Like, mine was, there's a right way for my body to be. Yours was, I'm a tomboy, or like, and then you had to be girly, and then you had to lose, right? Like, so recognizing the conversations that you're having with yourself that aren't healthy, and then being able to talk about it with the appropriate people, so that way you can start to shift your own mindset around your body, and be able to just to be able to have that base level of body acceptance, right? And then yeah,
totally,
and then then once you get that level of body acceptance, it's like you really can discover how cool your fucking body is,
totally.
like.
Yeah, it's like, just at the base, at the very, very least, allow yourself to be curious. Like, when you see kids are so curious, they just get absorbed in like the most random stuff. And I think it's easy as an adult to make life it's very like, it already is this way and it has to be this way. And you just lose the ability to just like get absorbed in curiosity. And I think that's all a journey is. So yeah, if nothing else, be curious.
Be curious. Be curious and let yourself discover. That was definitely another theme of our conversation. Be curious and let yourself discover what you need.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to conclude it there. Thank you so much, Cordelia, for...
Thank you. This was great.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm so glad that we finally were able to chat on camera and on audio, just about body acceptance. And yeah, if you want to put in how people can reach you, or what you would like if you would like to plug anything or how people can reach you, go ahead.
Well, my Instagram is Cordelia Jumps. I'm sure you could put that in the notes so they can spell it out and stuff. And my email is cordeliastorm@gmail.com. Yeah. Oh yeah. And also, if you want to check out some, not in person, but at home movement sessions, go to pkvmoves.org, because both me and Elizabeth teach classes on that. And being stuck at home is no reason not to move. So, yeah.
Exactly. I think our classes are really fun, but
I have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Thank you, Cordelia, for coming on. You're just a ball of sunshine, and I just love you to pieces.
Yay, love ya. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Love Dripping from the Walls. I just love all of my love nerds out there who are listening to these episodes or watching these episodes on YouTube. Again, just thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support of this podcast. If you would like to support this podcast, please go to anchor.fm anchor.fm/love dripping from the walls. There is a place to review. There's a place to subscribe. There's a place to be a monthly sponsor. Please, 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 if you would like to do that, definitely do that. This is what I do for a living. And I'm building my living and my career off of bringing these topics to light, to having more people on the show who have areas of expertise, knowledge, or experience in different things just around the topic of love. There's so many different topics of love that we can talk about that aren't talked about, conversations that we can have, that we can open up to actually set people free, have people be validated in their own experience, and also to set people free so that they don't have to live in the stories of whether what they're doing is right or wrong or backwards or forwards or whatever, but that people can just know that they're humans, having an experience inside of love, sex, and relationships, and that this podcast can be a resource for people who are dealing with things that they might not know that there are resources for. So with that being said, if you have any comments, questions, if you have any subjects that you would like to talk about, please reach out to me at lovedrippingfromthewalls@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram. The podcast Instagram is Love Dripping from the Walls, and my personal Instagram is Els Cunningham. All this is going to be in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Thank you for loving. I so appreciate every single one of you.